My name is Adam Schaal, and I'm here to talk to you about tips and tactics for creating your own CTF event. A little bit about me. I'm a product security manager at AWS. I have a decade of experience making and breaking applications. I am really involved in my community. There's a conference in Omaha, Nebraska called KernelCon, which I helped found and run. I also run my local DEF CON group, and I have a open source CTF framework, which you're welcome to check out, bug me about, open feature requests. And last year I had the pleasure of helping Local MocoSec, a conference in Hawaii, get off the ground with their website, and helped organize that. Here's a few of my social media links if you, while I'm still on Twitter, and if you want to follow my work. A little bit about me and my experience with CTFs. I've organized over a dozen CTFs at different levels. When I was in college, I organized high school CTFs for recruiting, employer CTFs for educating software and security teams, and conference CTFs for educating and stumping attendees. These are some of my most recent CTFs I helped with or put together. Two of the sponsors here I helped create CTFs for, and that's MyCon. I ran the CTF for the last 3 years, and that's the DEF CON AppSec Village. I've submitted a few CTF challenges to that. So if you went to DEF CON this year and participated in the AppSec Village CTF, probably saw one or two of my challenges. So I imagine that a lot of people in this room know what CTFs are, but I was a social butterfly walking around, and when people would ask what I was speaking about, and I told them about CTFs, I did get some questions. So just a quick kind of high-level introduction, and then I'll describe why I think why they're important. What is the CTF? Well, that's an abbreviation, obviously, for Capture the Flag Event. Bless you. And it's a competition that takes major disciplines of information security and breaks them into smaller, objectively measurable exercises. Right? Participants or contestants, they attempt to solve the challenges by exploiting, breaking other cybersecurity tradecraft. And there's two main types. There's Jeopardy and there's Attack Defend. Now, Jeopardy style CTF, you might see something that looks like this. Basically, participants are presented with a Jeopardy board filled with categories and challenges at varying point levels. As you go down the challenge board into the more into the higher point levels, the challenges will get more difficult. You can see, based on like this board, you can almost see that effect, right? You could see all the green at the top and there's more white at the bottom. And as the challenge is solved, the team earns points associated with each challenge and they move up the leaderboard accordingly. In Jeopardy style CTFs, ties are often broken by whoever achieved the score first. And I would say that these are still today the most common form of cybersecurity competitions. There's also Attack Defend CTFs. Now, these are quite different in structure. Each team is scored based on the amount of time they keep their services up. So you have these teams at the top here, and then you have their services at the bottom. So in this example here, Team 1, they're defending their own services. Their services are provided to them by the organizers of the event, and they're often intentionally vulnerable. So Team 1 has to figure out how to defend it, but anytime they find a vulnerability that they patch, they also try to exploit that vulnerability against these other teams. This is a common CTF format at larger conferences like DEF CON. So I helped write challenges for the AppSec Village CTF. That was the Jeopardy style board. But the main event, the main CTF, they do an Attack Defend type of CTF. And this is probably what people would consider to be like a more well-rounded CTF, whereas the Jeopardy style, you're able to focus in on particular aspects of security and knock them out one by one. From an educational standpoint, especially from like the lens of developers, I actually believe that the Jeopardy style CTF is best because there each participant is focused on challenging themselves and not their competitors. right? They're learning for themselves. And so thus for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to just mostly refer to Jeopardy style CTFs. So that's kind of like the breakdown of what is a CTF, what are the main types, what you can expect. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the importance of a CTF. So let's talk a little bit about security awareness training, all right? I'm going to ask a question here. Which segment of these employees are most crucial to train with security awareness, right? I could see arguments for all three of these. Human resources, they have information to every employee. They have all the employees' information. The finance, they control the money of the company. The engineering team, they're the ones building the products of the company, right? And so the product, reaches out, and if it's dog shit, then it's unfortunately going to reflect negatively on the company, and or lead to vulnerabilities. So potentially could compromise the others as well with that. So I could see an argument for all three of these. But let me ask you this question. Which of these groups are most likely to skip or not pay attention to the training? And this is where it requires audience participation. So everyone, raise your hand if you've ever done security awareness training, like in a video deck or like a slideshow or anything that just awful. It took hours of your life, all right? Now, keep your hand up if you found out a way to break that mechanism. Like open the JavaScript console and, made an auto clicker. Yeah, look at all these hands up, okay? These are the people, these are the fuckers that I'm talking about, all of you guys, all right? Because when I ask who is the most likely to not follow that training and figure out a way around it, it's people like you and developers. It's not HR and finance. They're going to diligently sit there for 4 hours and listen to every little line that the slideshow says, and they'll click next when they can appropriately click next. But engineers and developers and security members, they're going to find a way around it because they don't want to waste 4 hours, right? So I guess the next questions are then, is your current security awareness training the most effective it can be? And does your technical staff view security awareness training as a chore? All right. I think that those types of training that I described, I think people view that as a chore, especially our community. And so I'd like to propose CTF events as a possible alternative. One possible way to motivate your engineering staff is through gamification. In a recent survey, 79% of security awareness training participants, they indicated that they'd be more productive and motivated if their learning was more like a game, right? And not like how fast I can click this next button, and when the browser makes it clickable again. So let's talk about potential outcomes from a CTF event, right? I think that these are all great outcomes. First, you're going to have engaged training with volunteer involvement, right? It's opt-in. People who want to participate, they have to sign up and come and form a team. Teaching developers and architects to think like a bad actor, that's only going to help them in their jobs when they go and they work on building out features, threat modeling themselves, knowing how to think like a bad actor, that's only going to help them. Also, if you're an application security team, which is generally when I wrote these, you become well known with all the engineers who attend your event. And that's a big deal because application security engineers are at their best when they're empathetic and they can understand and work with the engineering team. I've heard this philosophy of no, right? That people say that comes from security team. A lot of developers think that the security team is just somebody who gets in their way or something you have to throw over the wall to them and wait for feedback. But if they know you, if they know they can point to that person and say, hey, John, Like, I want to go talk to you and maybe grab lunch with you. And by the way, what do you think about this feature that I'm implementing? Like, that is something that's going to benefit everybody in your organization. And also, let's be honest, it allows the application security team to demonstrate their expertise. A lot of times, developers and engineers and architects, they have no idea what we do. But then if you put them in front of a challenge and you say, go exploit this SQL injection, and they don't know what they're doing, it allows the application security team to become the experts in the room. So you're becoming friends with them, you're demonstrating your expertise, you're teaching them, and you have engaged training. So I think these are potential great outcomes. So now that I've described why I think a CTF is important, I'm going to describe how to create one, right? Because creating a CTF can be an intimidating aspect. First, know your audience. What are the experience levels? Are they all a particular type of developer? If I'm training front-end engineers only, I would never give them a privilege escalation on a Linux box necessarily, right? They're going to have different learning objectives than a OS engineer or a back-end engineer or a mobile engineer. And then what's the desired output? What are we trying to train, right? Think about, your last year. Did you have a lot of one particular vulnerability feature? And think, okay, we're really bad at authentication mechanisms. So we need to train on that. And we need to work on that. So I'm going to build out lots of authentication challenges. Or I'm going to focus in on, XSS, because we're always working on fixing our cross-site scripting issues, because we're reflecting outputs to the web and nobody's sanitizing it. And it's just, cowboy season, everyone's doing whatever they want. And so we're always having to fix it. So that's step one. Step two then is, now that you know your audience and you know your desired outcomes, is to select your CTF categories. And I'm going to stay on the screen for a little bit because I want to describe each of these in good detail enough that you could know yourself like what the outcomes are, what would fit that outcome. So here's 7 categories. There's more than these in the wild, but I stick to these 7, generally speaking. And I do that because I have a miscellaneous category, so, But web, these type of challenges utilize websites. They're typically like an OWASP top 10 vulnerability and or misconfigurations. Oftentimes, these have an extremely low barrier of entry. So everyone uses websites every day. Easier vulnerabilities are highly publicized. People have a good level of experience with navigating through a website. Forensics. Forensics challenges cover a wide range of challenges. Sometimes they involve steganography, hiding things in pictures, reconnaissance work, malformed files. If the networking category is not filled out, a lot of times they might involve a networking challenge. And when there's not enough for a full forensics category, sometimes some of these challenges can be dropped into the miscellaneous category. Again, it's a low barrier of entry because there are a lot of open source forensics tools to utilize. I think there's 15 steganography tools that I will use in a CTF. And if it's usually not one of those 15 that solves the challenge for me, I don't solve it. But there's at least, I think, 15 different steganography open source programs that you could just download and play with and, try to analyze an image. The miscellaneous category, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a place to put challenges in case there's not a lot of, in case you can't fill out another category. However, I'm highlighting it because I think it's also a good place to put a couple of non-technical challenges, right? Which helps ensure that the CTF is beginner friendly. You don't want to be intimidating to start with. One of the things I like to do is I put a 500-point, very detailed crossword puzzle in the miscellaneous category. Why? 500 points is the highest that you could get, but also it takes a significant amount of time to figure out each clue. And somebody on the team who's not the most technical person, they can spend 2 hours doing it and get 500 points for their team and feel like they've like contributed. Not only have they contributed, they've hit a maximum point value, and they didn't spend all day, working above their level, I guess I would say. So it's a great place for less technical challenges, and that's a perfect place if you have if this is an open call for people, not just focused on developers, and you have those HR and finance people who want to participate. That's a perfect place to put a lot more like detailed challenges, where they can go and they can learn or have trivia. Like they can go and figure out like, what does it mean when your input box is not sanitized and then they reflect input back to the web page? What does that mean? And so somebody who's not super technical can really shine in that category. Cryptography. This category involves higher levels of mathematics. Cryptography is a great category because contestants use cryptography in their professional lives every day, and they often don't even think about it, right? And, you connect to HTTPS. How many of you know how TLS works, like off the top of your head? Yeah, okay, Mark. Yeah, some of you do. Some of you do. But a lot of times you don't think about it, right? Unless that's your job. And so the barrier for entry is a little higher here because not everybody has experience with that levels of math. But that said, you can make easier cipher challenges also at the beginning, like Caesar ciphers or substitution ciphers. Reverse engineering, that's one of the more difficult categories to approach if you don't have experience in it. A typical CTF challenge is a binary that has a method to return a flag that's buried inside of C code and then obfuscated and compiled. And participants must actually parse through the binary and reverse engineer it until they can figure out how to call the flag or form it through the binary. That is a hard challenge. When I'm doing educational CTFs, I rarely have a reverse engineering challenge that's, I'd say, higher than 200 points, because I want people to understand the basic concepts, but also it's not really their job if they're a developer to reverse engineer binaries. That's more on the security side anyway. Networking, this category is relatively specific, occasionally gets rolled into forensics. It encompasses all disciplines of network engineering and commonly utilizes packet captures. Packet captures are, capturing network traffic. If you're familiar with Wireshark, you know what a packet capture is. And sometimes they'll hide flags within a packet capture that you have to go find or figure out how to analyze the traffic in order to extrapolate a flag. And then the last challenge, this is when I was talking to people about CTFs, a lot of people thought I meant only pwn and exploit challenges. This is something like hack the box, where you're essentially misuse or breaking into something outside your access control, right? If you've heard of the OSCP or hack the box, that's very similar to this. Basically, you're breaking into a computer and you're escalating your privileges until you own that box or that service. This is another thing that I don't know if I'd have a ton of on an educational security awareness type of training, because while it teaches you something, it covers all the disciplines, and not every developer is well versed in every single discipline. They know their bag usually. But that's enough on categories. This is a fun part, right? It might sound unimportant, but CTF contests are definitely enhanced when there's a challenge that circles around a theme. And the theme in the CTF makes each challenge a fun story, usually includes a goal. This is vital because good CTF challenges tell a story. They give the participants a reason to attack a challenge, and it's also a way that a creator can give away hints. And at a bare minimum, it gives the contestants a direction, right? Here are some popular themes when I've been involved in CTFs, like Jurassic Park or Back to the Future. You also have, you have a good guy and a bad guy, right? Your bad guy is Nedry. He fucked up the IT network. He wasn't paid enough, and he screwed everything up, and now you need to bring the services back up in Jurassic Park, You need to crack his website and get into his password manager. You need to break into his computer to turn off the fences or to electrify the fences again. You know, all kinds of challenges present themselves because of having like a, you know, an antagonist. And you know, Back to the Future, there's Biff, right? And you can have a number of different challenges that revolve around why Biff is doing something. Like Biff changed the code on the DeLorean. Now you need to decode it and fix it. I've also been a part of CTFs with wider scope themes like retro video games or Western CTF. In each of these, like the challenge creator can create a story around the hero, which is the contestant, and a bad actor, you know, like Nedry, Biff, or Bowser, or Outlaws. And it really helps like the challenge writers determine a goal. So some CTF framework considerations. All right, so we've picked a theme. We have you know, we've scoped out kind of what categories we want. We've decided outcomes. So how do we pick a framework? Well, before picking a framework, you need to figure out what kind of challenges you're deploying. Do you have user isolated challenges? A user isolated challenge would be if I gave somebody access to a box, I wouldn't want that contestant to be able to affect everyone else. You know, I wouldn't want somebody to, this gentleman right here, I wouldn't want him to go be able to change the flag so nobody else could get the flag. So I might give everybody their own container. And that way, you know, nobody would be able to affect every other person. Do you plan on having coding challenges? This is another popular way that you can, popular way that you can test people's knowledge is you can give them broken code. And then you can run a test case against that code. And if it fails, then they haven't solved it. So, you know, if you want something like that, you need a framework that can support that mechanism. And how do you plan on scoring? Are you going to have dynamic scoring? More people solve a challenge, is the point value going to go down? What about the first person to solve the challenge? And what needs do you anticipate during the competition? Will you need to edit a challenge mid-event? Do you need to drop hints? Is the admin panel working? So these are things that you need to consider, but an important note is it might run in parallel with actually writing the challenges because, you know, without having the challenges, it's hard to define kind of what you need. So let's talk about options. Here's 3 options. CTFD, it's the most popular CTF framework right now. It's open source and it requires a fair amount of configuration, but it now supports user isolation challenges. It didn't a year ago, now it does. And it also supports coding. So if you have a code challenge, this will check that. KCTF, this is quite recent actually. Google just released this. It's a Kubernetes-based platform that will dynamically spin up a new container every time a user hits an instance. So this is a way to do that user isolation. It's run in the command line or on GCP, but right now there's not a way to integrate it into a cohesive front end, which I think is like the next step. I would consider it very beta project right now. Technically, you could use it as your like challenge server, and then you could use a front end, and you could just point to the URLs that you're generating. But if you want like an all-in-one, that doesn't do it yet. And then, you know, selfishly, Red CTF, it's open source, scalable with user isolated challenge capabilities. I will tell you, documentation is a little lacking. So that's not my strong suit. But I've used it for the last 3 years at KernelCon, and it's worked for 200 participants, plus participants each time. We have user isolated challenge capabilities. We also dynamically spin up containers based on total number of entries. And so we hand people containers instantly. The second they hit they hit get me a container, it gets handed to them, and then we're spinning one up in the background. These are some options, right? CTFD is probably out of the box the easiest one. Writing the challenges. This is the most important part of creating a CTF because your primary goal is education. right? That is, repeat that with me. Primary goal is education. And a challenge writer, they can fall into several traps, which make for a terrible experience with participants. And I'm gonna talk through those traps real quick. Trap 1, I'm so smart. The challenge ends up being crazy difficult for the competitors and is not a real life situation. An example of that would be if you installed a vulnerable service and then you custom patched it. You patched only one piece of that service. That would never happen in real life. If there was a vulnerable service and you knew about it, you would just do the advisory that was produced by the vendor. You would patch it that way. You wouldn't custom patch one little feature of it, and, intentionally trying to make it more difficult. So that's a trap, right? You don't want to make something where you think that this is going to be so smart, but nobody solves it. 0 people solve it. They hate it. Trap number 2, the competitor is confused, right? This challenge ends up being guesswork. I've seen a lot of these, and I usually when I'm soliciting challenges, this is the one that I have to often go back to challenge creators and talk to them about, because a lot of times people will put together like guesswork challenges. One of them was you solve a latitude and you solve a longitude, and then how to get the flag is you go put that in Google Map, and then you look around the street view and you find a sign with a town name on it, and you take that sign and you do an MD5 hash, and that's the flag. But it's like, yeah, how would anyone know to do that? You just gave them a longitude and latitude and then nothing. That's fucking impossible. So, there was one character, bless his heart, real good guy, but he made a reverse engineering challenge that had lots of little modules everywhere. And when you put it into a particular dissembler, and then you scrolled out enough, it was made into a meme that had a flag. Well, turns out he didn't test it in any other dissemblers. It only worked in a single one, and it only worked if you had a big enough screen. And so it was impossible to use for any other person. And that you run into these traps here, and it just ends up being a nightmare. And the last trap, the challenge is too messy. And this is similar to the confusing path one, but it doesn't have a single path, or it doesn't cover the intended lesson. And here's an example of something like that. You build out a cryptography challenge that you get a string and you have to do base 64. Okay, you get another string, and then you do rot 13. Okay, you get another string, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then this, and then that, and this, and that, and you're at 8 levels deep before you find the flag. That makes no sense. Like, it's way messy. Nobody encrypts anything like that. Nobody, half of the stuff that they were using isn't a real cryptography method. It just happened to be in CyberChef, right? And then CyberChef is if you're not familiar with it, it's a way where you can take an input and you can add recipes to it until it results in something. This is just a nightmare though, because these recipes could be in any order and there's no clues as to what the next string is. So people fall into these traps, and I want to preface everybody in the room with this. Be careful when you're writing a challenge that you don't fall into these traps. What you want to do is you want to write a good story, okay? You want to stick to a theme. You want to have a goal for your user, have a clear path, right? A win condition, have it make sense. And if it's challenging, write a potential hint. Like, have that available for for the people who are running the CTF. And then give good instructions and a title. This is something that can be really important. When I'm creating a challenge, I like to tell a story with a theme. Am I trying to log into this website as the admin? Am I searching for a flag hidden inside of a photo? These types of questions can be answered with a good story, right? And the last one, good instructions and title. Sometimes you can sneak hints into titles or descriptions of the challenges. This is one of my favorite things to do. For example, if a challenge might talk about a user and their financial path, that kind of might indicate that there's a path traversal vulnerability. So that you can help give hints to people where you're not fielding a million questions because they have no idea where to go. Stories and hints are fun, but the most important thing to consider when writing a challenge is to make sure it's logical and sane. If it's crazy that you have to go to a longitude and latitude on Google Maps, spin around until you find a sign, then MD5 that the name of that town, right? That is illogical. Doesn't make any sense. So the best way to do this is to have another challenge creator solve it. Give it to somebody else and say, can you solve this? And they can give you honest feedback about your challenge. And then one of the things that you should also do is write and commit a solution as well. Do you have something?
You just say use QA.
Yeah. You know what? I have a QA slide. So make sure you write and commit a solution as well. You should be able to tell somebody how to solve your challenge. If you can't tell somebody how to solve your challenge, it's not good enough. Throw it away. So write out a solution. Pro tips. If you're somebody who wants to do this, bookmark articles you read throughout the year as potential inspiration for challenges. I have a CTF going on at Amazon right now that uses a math.random. It's predictable. And there was an article earlier this year and then a YouTube video that I saw about how you can predict node V8 math.random. And I saved that article all year, and then I wrote a CTF challenge for it. And my solution is based on the YouTube video's script that he wrote. So I grabbed his script, and that was it. If you can get several people to create challenges, diversity for a challenge set is great. You are only experiencing things through your lens. So if you are a particular really good web guy, you might not write the best challenges for back-end folks, or might not write the best exploit challenges. And then you could keep a spreadsheet or a repository to track challenges so you know what topics are covered. This is a good one because it helps you you can make sure that you're covering the different areas you want to hit. Also, you can have status, right? So you know that this is earmarked, but not yet completed, and person B is the person working on it. So you could say, hey, person B, when are you gonna have that challenge done? Like CTF is fast approaching. And as we all are procrastinators, usually the answer is like, next week, it's coming. So, but it's a good way to, keep track of it. And then also to differentiate your categories, like, oh shit, networking only has one challenge. Do we even need a whole category for it? So, and lastly, have each creator write and commit a solution to their challenge. This is important because when you're doing the actual CTF, those challenge creators are not going to be available 24 hours a day. So if I have a solution and I'm hosting the event, I'm able to help people still without having written the challenge myself. I might not have even solved it myself. But if I have a challenge, I have a solution in front of me, I'm able to give hints, tell people they're heading in the right direction, etc. All right, so here's the QA slide. Boyd left, but this is the QA slide. Once the challenges are written, you need to test each one ahead of the competition to ensure that everything's working properly. Also, you can check scoring. I have been in situations where I scored something at 400 points, and then somebody says to me, this isn't a 400-point challenge. There's a public exploit now. It's super easy. You just go here and download this exploit, and you can solve it. So we needed to refactor, and now it's a 200-point challenge. And then stand up an entire test environment in AWS or Azure or something. And that way you can actually test finding and submitting flags, because you want to make sure that the submission part works as well. And have solutions and hints ready so you can figure that out as well. We're nearing the end here. We're going to talk a little bit about hosting the event. This is the time you can pick up big wins. Expect a lot of questions, but this is good, okay? This is a great way to get FaceTime with the people that you don't see that often. Make sure to answer questions with empathy. Don't, if somebody's asking you what you consider a simple question, tell them why and give them much, as much detail as you can provide. Do not scoff and, tell them to try harder or go to Google or whatever, because that's not going to be a way to ingratiate you to your teammates. All right. And so you want to answer with empathy. And these are people that you might only see through Zoom or Slack. And they're, they might not be around much, but you're inviting them. Invite them in. And answering questions, also good way to demonstrate competency, which we talked about earlier. But now you're not only demonstrating your competency, but you're also becoming a trusted resource for them. That person is going to know that they can go to you and ask you a question in the future, which is important because the amount of people who don't ask questions, who fail silently, that's the biggest sin in software engineering. You need to ask for help if you don't know what you're doing, or you think that this is potentially like a service that needs a security review, but it didn't get marked for one, or it didn't get architected. So you should be able to become a trusted resource for this person. And, answering questions is a large part of your time, but you also need to make sure that the framework's always running and verify any challenges need extra hints. I typically don't give out a lot of hints until like the end of the CTF. If there's 0 solves on a challenge, I'll give hints. But generally speaking, your challenges should be like a bell curve. The easy challenges lumped in the middle, the harder challenges on the outside, less people solve those. And then don't forget to make it fun. Invite participants to hang out in the operations room, stock it with food, drinks, and treats, play music, have a live scoreboard, and make sure the participants are enjoying themselves. Remember, they're volunteering their time to learn security in more detail with you. And so you want to make it as an accepting of an environment as you can. And so that's why, get a budget, buy stuff, buy prizes. If you buy prizes, don't just give them to the first place team. Buy prizes for the first place team and then 10 more. Give them to anybody who solved the challenge. And say, like, if you solve the challenge, I'm going to draw your name from a hat. And you get one of these prizes too. In conclusion, creating a CTF can be a lot of work. And you might ask, is this worth it, right? I spent an hour describing all the different things that you need to do. But let me ask these questions, okay? Are people engaged with this gamified security training? Yes. Is my team able to demonstrate its expertise? Yes. Is my team getting to know the engineering team that we work closely with? Yes. Are the participants having fun? Yes. And if you can answer yes to all these questions, it's worth it. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Have you ever actually run into steganography in the real world?
No. Steganography is the bane of my existence. That is when I'm doing a CTF, that's my least favorite category, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know this talk was about CTF, but have you involved or have you ever seen anybody else try to involve the incident response team to kind of do like a tabletop based off of the CTFs?
Yeah, actually, I have. I worked at an insurance company, and the security operations team was they're kind of my testers, and we would go through and they would help test the framework, and then we would talk about like how they would react, and they would build out drafts of like how they would react to certain situations and build out their own run books for it. I had one particular case where I was moving all of my challenges from one box to another box, and I had committed it accidentally to a public repo, and one of the security operations people found it, and all of a sudden he had 100% solves, and it was super embarrassing. But he won. I think I had a budget, so I was giving the testers the top 3 prizes, some cash, and he won. So, but yeah, it's a great question. Involving the SecOps team is a great way to like get them to be involved in run books and help you, design things that are real world scenarios. Yeah, back there and then up here.
So in practice, CTFs can take like 4 hours to 4 days, depending on the format. When you do this at work, what's usually the format?
Yeah, it's a great question. So every time I've done it at workplaces that have people all over the world. So what I typically do is I leave it open for 24 hours, and then I break my team up into 8-hour shifts. And so I always take the worst shift, like the more early morning type of shift kind of thing. But then we have full coverage across all 24 hours, and it's not biased against any time zone because it's just available. Usually when I'm doing that, I also just like never release hints, because if you're releasing hints, you might be doing it when America is sleeping or, Israel is sleeping, and that's not fair. So if I'm doing like a 24-hour type of event, that's what I do. Sometimes we'll do things where at Amazon right now, our CTF has been open all week, so people can work at it at their leisure, and they have the entire week. And so by the end of the week, yesterday, somebody solved the entire challenge board. So it was Thursday, and now you have more people like finishing and everything. That format is kind of like up to your discretion, right? If you can get time off for these people who are participating, like away from their jobs, or make it part of like a fun day for them, then do that. I highly recommend like get them time to work on it. At Amazon, this was like in your free time type of thing right now. So they weren't giving people time off to specifically work on it. So that's why it was a full week.
What's a decent number of challenges?
That's a good question. I think that most of the challenges are, I think that a lot of that depends on like how many hard challenges you have. And so I think minimum, I try to hit about 20. But I've seen, 30 or 40 before in a situation like that. Most of the time when you're doing 30 or 40, it's because you have lots of easy challenges. You're working with a lot of intro level people. So you're hiding flags inside of source code and websites. So if they click F11, they'll get a flag, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, how do you, or companies you work at, how do you incentivize or compel participation, from non-security folks? Do you know what I mean? Obviously it's best if it's voluntary, but have you found good strategies for really getting non-security focused people to participate?
Yeah, one of the better strategies that I had with that was when I worked at a company called Contrast Security. We had an offsite in San Diego, and the whole company came out there, and we had the CTF available all week. So every person who was working on it, they had their laptops open and people were seeing it, and that just made them want to get involved. And so I had HR, I had UX people come up to me and ask me like, hey, what are they doing? And so I'd introduce them to the concept of CTFs, and I'd talk to them about it. I don't think that you can make it mandatory. I think that it needs to be something that somebody, becomes interested in. And so that, that helped. Boyd.
So I want to follow up because I was at that offsite with Evan, right? And I'm not a security person, I'm just security curious. And I watched, how every startup wants to put some viral on it so they can make $1 billion and fuck you money, right? I watched that CTF become viral like Evan was talking about because I wasn't going to participate in it, but I watched my cloud operations people go, what are they doing? Can we do that? I'm like, hell yeah. And more people ended up participating over time, and it was shocking the number of sales engineers, customer success people, and Adam ended up stealing one of our people over to be the first cloud security engineer, and a lot of his curiosity came from getting involved in that CTF. So
thanks for the
it was one of the coolest things I've ever watched, just in terms of human hacking. So
yeah.
So I guess framing this more from the competition standpoint, since you run competition CTFs, what are your thoughts on awarding points for things that maybe were not tracked challenges? So I discover a vulnerability which is accounted for.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to cover all of that in the instructions. I say if you discover a vulnerability in the system, let us know. It's worth up to X points, and I try to cover that kind of like general. I was running a CTF last year where I left the room to introduce the speaker, and when I came back, somebody had created a new challenge and awarded somebody points because somebody came up and asked them for a flag. So they made up a flag and gave it to them, and they're like, "Yeah, this is now a new flag. Like you just have to ask us for one." And that person who asked for one was the only one who solved it the whole event. Nobody else walked up to the creators asking for it. So I think like if it's not within your scope, I think you got to stay away from it. It can bring up tons of arguments. We had a lock picking village say, "Hey, we want to put these locks up for people to go hack and participate." And we said, "Great idea, let's do it." And they said, "This is like a 100 level one. This is a 300 level one, and this is a 500 point level one." And we said, "Great, we'll put these challenges up." And we did it really randomly at the time, but it created so much grief because the lock picking village then participated in the CTF, and they were the only ones to solve all three of the lock picks. So I kind of locked down the CTF and the points, and I include things like, like if you crack our framework, please tell us, especially because I'm usually running my own framework. But anything else, I say I'm not including it during the event. People bring up things, I say, nope, sorry.
I think that's a good call. I really prefer a well-defined scope.
Yeah.
I don't want to throw any names out there, but a CTF vendor has a lot of bonus challenges, and you can spend like weeks trying to solve the bonus challenges. Undocumented, you never know when to end. It's super frustrating.
Yeah, I agree.
So as somebody who isn't qualified to create one, when I have somebody come to me security curious, I usually send them to Bandit War Games if they're thinking about, say, Linux or something like that. Am I doing them a service or a disservice? Can I continue to use those things even though they're ancient?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also Pico CTF. That's a really beginner-friendly open CTF. Hack the Box, which is that's more of the full scope all the way to privilege escalation. There's what's the EU one? Do you know? Try Hack Me is one. Yeah. But there's a number of different places. I should have had a resources slide. That would have been
The
good.
thing I recommend to folks is checking out ctftime.org, and that'll show you, like, number one, a list and a schedule of upcoming CTFs, but they also have write-ups, and you can learn so much from reading the write-ups of other challenges.
Yeah, that's a great call out. You can build a team on ctftime.org too, and you can compete. I had a team that cracked global top 100 one year. That was really cool. But you go and you have to be very active to do that, and they have upcoming CTFs that you can track and join in and be a part of. It's a really cool place.
What's a typical cost for a company to run a CTF, especially if you're building it on your own? I mean,
Yeah.
we've done it before, and they basically just say, yeah, whatever you guys need. But for somebody else,
Yeah, great question. So it takes time, right? It takes some of your time, and you need to say, I'm going to do this as part of my security awareness training, and so I'm spending additional time, more than I would do, because this is going to benefit us in the long run. And then I need a prize budget, or I have food and snacks budget. And so generally, like that, a lot of that depends on how long you want to scope the competition, and how many participants you can reasonably have. In some cases, like Amazon's case, they have thousands of participants, and so we can't really buy everybody a T-shirt at that level, But like if you have 200 participants, maybe everyone could get a T-shirt or swag, and you could have food and stuff. So I think it depends, but I've done it for less than 5. I've done it for less than 8. Those are the two where I got a defined budget.
now is that for infrastructure as well? I mean, I know that's kind of the prizes and winning.
Yeah. So the infrastructure is super cheap. I mean, that's less than $90 for one weekend. It's super cheap and really easy to run and spin up. Everything's containerized. You put it up in an EC2 box, and it runs for a week or two, and that's less than $100.
So earlier you said that Amazon couldn't afford to buy t-shirts for 1,000 people. Should I be thinking about moving to Azure?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a leadership principle, and it's frugality. So my hotel room, resembles that. All right, well, hey, thanks everybody for coming. If you have questions, there's my contact info. I really appreciate it.